Now, when someone has their sun in the 5th house of your chart, the 5th house is the house of Leo. It is the house of the sun. Leo corresponds to the heart. The 5th house is the house of love. So when someone has their sun in the 5th house of your chart, where they are bringing strength, where they are bringing awareness, is to things that you love, the deepest desire of your heart, what you love, how you love. Do you listen to what the heart really desires? When someone has their sun in the 5th house of your chart, this is a relationship where you just love that person. It is an affair of the heart. Also, the 5th house has a lot to do with pleasure, playfulness, fun, children. So again, the sun brings clarity and light. So your sense of being like a child, your sense of playfulness, when someone has their sun in the 5th house of your chart, they remind you, again, they bring into awareness to always keep that sense of childlikeness, that sense of fun and pleasure in your life. When someone has their sun in the 6th house of your chart, this is a relationship that's good for your health. They strengthen the health. The 6th house is the physical body, your daily routine, your daily habits, and it is the house of health. So, for instance, let's say there is a health habit that isn't good for you, for example. When someone has their sun in the 6th house of your chart, they can help you to see that, become aware of that. They bring strength to your health. And also the 6th house is work. So this is a very strong placement for a working relationship, someone that you share a job with. And again, because the sun is strength and awareness, any kind of health issue, this is almost like a natural healing relationship, a natural doctor kind of relationship. Again, they bring clarity and strength to the area of your habits, your health, the physical body. Now, the 7th house, when someone has their sun in the 7th house of your chart, the 7th house is opposite to the 1st house, which is I am. The 7th house in astrology is the house of the opponent. It's called the house of open enemies. So when someone has their sun shining in the 7th section of your chart, the 7th house, they will bring more clarity, more awareness to the way you negotiate, how you are willing to compromise. The 7th house is the house of diplomacy. Also in astrology, the 7th house is the house of marriage. So a very close relationship where you perceive the other person to be an opposite, how we are willing to compromise with that, negotiate, make peace with what we perceive to be a power struggle. This is the 7th house. So yes, this placement here can be a very strong bond, a very close relationship. And again, the sun shining in the house of the opposite is how we are willing to compromise and negotiate. Now, the 8th house. The 8th house, when someone has their sun in the 8th house of your chart, this is a very powerful relationship. The 8th house is the house of death. It is the house of saying goodbye. And all of our fears around the issues of letting go, saying goodbye. The 8th house, when someone has their sun there, they are shining their light on things that we fear releasing. The 8th house has a lot to do with power, destiny, a higher will, a higher power that is greater than our personal power. So things that we have no control over, it's destined to be. When someone has their sun in the 8th section of our chart, the 8th house, again, they will bring greater light, greater awareness to our fears surrounding letting go, saying goodbye. Now, the ninth house, the ninth section of the chart, when someone has their sun there, this is one of the greatest teachers, if not the greatest teacher in our life, because the ninth house is the house of truth. It's the house of honesty. It's also the section of teaching and philosophy. So when someone has their sun in the ninth house of our chart, where they are shining a light, where they are bringing greater clarity and strength, it's in the area of how honest of a life we are living, our sense of integrity. And again, this is a great teaching relationship because they shine their sunlight on the area of truth. This is the ninth house, the truth seeker. So this is a very strong placement for a teacher in our life that brings clarity, brings light to lessons of integrity.